2025 has been a great year to love video games. There have been a lot of great games released this year, but to me, one stands out in particular. I love Expedition 33. To be honest, I don't think I've stopped thinking or talking about it since I finished my playthrough. I know at this point that's not really like a hot take or anything. I mean, this game is a frontrunner for Game of the Year, or at least a nomination, but I do just want to say I was there from the beginning. I remember whenever they showed this trailer at the Xbox Game Showcase last summer, I immediately texted some of my friends saying that I cannot wait to play this game. But weirdly enough, between the time that this game was revealed and released, I kind of forgot about it. At the time, I was in the process of finishing up my undergraduate degree in college, and April 2025 came around before I knew it. So about a week or two before the game launched, I committed to the dreaded pre-order, and I was seated on night one when it released. And to be honest, this game was everything I could have hoped for and more than I could have ever imagined. Like I said, I was actively a student a month away from graduation when this game released, but yet playing this game was all that I could do or all that I could think about doing. I can't really encapsulate it in a better way than I felt like a kid again. But after you experience something like that, I feel like the next logical train of thought is why? Why did this piece of media make me feel this way? And honestly, at risk of sounding corny or cliche, I do think it's the soul. We meet characters who are faced with an impossible reality and impossible odds, but yet they have no choice but to keep going to this island, keep researching and sending their own to die, all for those who come after. And this idea alone is powerful. It intrigues you. It makes you wonder what's going on or why all these people are willing to do something you might question if you'd even be willing to do yourself. And yes, this is a big part of the story. It's what drew me in at first, and I'm sure a lot of people, but there is a lot more going on here. The story of Expedition 33 is kind of hard to write or talk about because it is so complex, and because also it changes so dramatically with each act, despite the one single goal of ending the paintress remaining the same. And while it does remain the same, the circumstances around that change so much that you might be asking how you're going to accomplish this or even why at certain points. When thinking about the layered themes here, I think this story is really about grief, family, and loss. It's about trying to find the will to do something not for yourself, but for those who come after. It's about continuing on when faced with impossible odds, and again, at risk of sounding cliche, it is about human spirit, ingenuity, and love. It's about all of these things, and at the same time, this story, on a more simple level, just encapsulates the human experience. I say all this to say that it was hard to really decide what this game is trying to say above all else, and I think part of the reason is because Sandfall is telling a story about characters. I think that Expedition 33, at its core, is a reflection on being human, and what that means for how we respond to the events in all of our lives. Before I continue down that rabbit hole of the story, because that's going to be a big task for a lot of this video, I do have to talk about the soundtrack here.
No time to lose.
Now, to be honest, I've never really been a big OST guy. Like, I'll remember the iconic OST moments, like the Cleric beast jumping onto the bridge in Bloodborne, or I'll remember some of the songs from God of War when Kratos appears on screen. I'll remember contextual stuff like that for sure, and when I hear it, it brings me back to that place immediately. But once again, in another way, Expedition 33 is different. Since playing, I'll just listen to this OST casually, like while I'm working out or driving or whatever. I listened to it most of the time that I was writing the script for this video. And just talking about the quality of this music is leaving out the huge part of making a soundtrack for a game, that is selecting tracks that pair with certain stages or specific boss fights or enemy encounters. The tracks that go with each area just fit perfectly. I mean, specifically, I just want to mention when you get to Flying Waters and that first like kind of electric sounding track kicks in. That's the first time that I noticed the music here. And I think that's a good way to put it, is most games, the music is good. I never have a problem with it and I never notice it. And that's a good thing, I guess. But here I notice it in a good way, in that I would start a fight and actively notice how good the track sounded. Tracks like Lumiere just perfectly fit the visual aesthetic and just the energy of the area that it's chosen for. And to be honest, I don't know enough about music on a technical level to be able to tell you why this soundtrack is so enjoyable or why it just works like it does, but I'll just leave it at the fact that I don't really understand the words, but I just get the message. Most of the soundtrack is in French, and I'm an English-speaking American, but yet I'm still able to appreciate the quality of music here. And I can't leave the topic of the soundtrack without mentioning that they found this composer on SoundCloud. They didn't go get some guy who's done soundtracks for games before or some already renowned composer. They took a chance on this guy, and I'm going to put his name on the screen because I really don't want to butcher it, but taking that chance paid off in excess, because over 5 years, this guy produced 154 tracks and over 8 hours of music. To be honest, again, I don't know enough about music to really tell you how much you should appreciate this more than I love this soundtrack and really like the circumstances surrounding it. Unbelievable is the only word that I have to describe it. And with that, I want to talk about the gameplay a little bit, because I feel like these things are much more approachable than the story, so I want to get them out of the way because I don't want to make a video about this game without giving credit to Samfall for what they've done here. The combat, I think, should change how people approach turn-based combat in general, including both players and developers. I've talked to a lot of people who have played this game, and a lot of my friends who played this game aren't the biggest turn-based combat fans, but even they have agreed with me in that this combat doesn't feel turn-based. Just the simple addition of an active input changes everything. To be honest, this combat wouldn't work as any other kind of action combat. You can't have mechanics like Ciel's cards or Lune's elemental charges or Gustav's overcharge. They would work on their own if that was the only character here, but to work together, you have to go turn-based, and I assume that's what Sandfall realized, or that's what they wanted the game to be like, was a combination of all of these things, and I think they made the right decision, unsurprisingly. On top of the general just good feeling of combat here, it's made even more methodical with the Pictos mechanic, which allows players to have some skill expression through build crafting. During the game, I would find different Pictos that would make me want to go completely respec my characters, and that's not usual for me. Most of the time in a game like this, I'll find a specific party or a specific set of skills that I'm gonna focus on for the entire game. In the beginning of this game, I had a party of Gustav, Lune, and Mael, and I pretty much intended on sticking with those three until the end of the game. But then about midway through Act 2, I got a scythe for Ciel that I wanted to try out, and when I looked into her skill tree, I saw the vision that Samfall was cooking here, and so I put Ciel in my party and built around that scythe and the abilities that went with it, and honestly, she ended up being my favorite character here, and it's not even particularly close. And sometimes it wasn't switching characters. In the beginning of the game, I was using Lune as basically purely support, but by the end of the game, I was doing just as good damage as all my other characters using her elemental charges mechanic. And I'm sure that all of you saw the Mael builds that were running rampant on launch with Steindal, and I think that's a great example of how well crafted these systems are. Some players, similar to me, saw a possibility and decided to pursue it, and they were rewarded for that, which I think is a sign of a good, well-crafted game mechanic. To be honest, I could go on all day about the combat here. While I'm recording this, I'm thinking about just going and starting a new playthrough of this game just to get hooked on the combat again. The feeling of parrying a full attack string in this game is really something I've only felt in Sekiro, and in my eyes that's pretty high praise, basically as good as it gets. The kinetic energy of the riposte attack alone is unmatched, along with the feeling of perfectly setting up a string of attacks across your full party that then pays off to the tune of millions of damage. It's just something I have found very few other places. I think that anyone who describes this combat as turn-based and leaves it at that, that's an unfair simplification of what's been done here. The game has complex systems that work together with combat based on methodical setup, rhythm game-like timing, and a bunch of flashing lights, punchy sound design, and deliberate camera movements to go along with crazy damage numbers as a reward for working in tandem with the systems at play. The combat is satisfying, unique, and honestly I think something worth trying out the game for on its own. I do think it's pretty easy to sit here and use all this gamer language about how fun the game is or how much I enjoy it, but the more difficult part is talking about the story that accompanies the flashing lights, big numbers, and the brain go brr sounds. So I came into school as an English major, and during that time, before quickly switching my major, I did go to one singular class period on filmmaking. And I remember during that class period, the professor told us that any good movie will tell you how to watch that movie in the opening minutes. Now, whether or not that's actually supposed to be true, I don't know. Like I said, I only went to one class, but Expedition 33 follows this principle and it works really well here. The game doesn't open with an explanation of the bizarre world that this story takes place in, but with the characters. We're thrown in on a day that a large portion of the population in Lumiere is about to be wiped out. But we aren't told that until it actually happens. Like I said, I knew about this game going in. I was well versed in everything there was to know because I was so excited for the game. But when I was watching other people play this on YouTube, I realized that that context is missing for players going in blind. In the beginning, the writers give nothing to go off of except for the characters. You start and you're introduced to Gustave and Maëlle with an unclear dynamic between the two. You meet Sophie without knowing that she's about to be wiped from existence within the next few minutes of gameplay. I mean, you figure out that Gustave is the sort of mentor to Maëlle with some banter and competition between the two, and you figure out that Sophie and Gustave have a history, but you don't really know why things ended. You get the sense that it's because of some outside influence, but you're not really sure what. And then everyone vanishes. And the setup here is a really important part about how Expedition 33 goes on to tell its story. A lot of writers would start off by introducing this world-altering event that's about to happen, leaving out the details in the beginning that get the player invested in the characters. Or maybe some people would even skip straight to the Gommage entirely, because that's what players got this game for, right? The big boom in the beginning where everybody dies. But Samfall isn't telling a story about the Gommage. They're telling a story about the characters and how they feel about and interact with this world. If you're paying attention from the beginning, it's clear to see that the characters are going to be the heart of this story, and by the end, that absolutely proves to be the case. Before I go any further with the story, I do want to give a bit of a disclaimer, because there are a lot of aspects of this game that I won't address in this video, just because talking about everything I love about this game would literally take me a million years, and I actually want to get this video out at some point. So I just want to take a minute to talk about a couple smaller things in this game. Number one, the duelist boss fight. I mean, that was the moment where this game went from being something I enjoyed to what I imagine it in my head as now, as in one of the best games I've ever played. That fight is amazing from beginning to end. The track that goes with it is amazing. The scripted sequence at the end of this fight is amazing. After you deal enough damage to defeat the boss, they could have just had it fall like every other enemy, but they decided to add a little bit of extra sauce to it, and I love that. I got up out of my chair after that one, like it just, you know, sometimes you just gotta get up and, you know, and so that's what that fight got me feeling like. Also love the lack of mini-map or even a map within the individual areas in this game. The environments never really feel too confusing, although there's definitely some doubling back and confusion after a fight based on which way you're facing, but because of that, you're kind of forced to be more immersed and pay more attention to this very intricately handcrafted world around you. Of course, I love the art in this game. It looks fantastic. I think that if you disagree, you just hate and just a hate, because while you may not love it, you can't deny that it looks good. The visuals work well fidelity-wise and contextually, just supporting the story taking place in these scenes and areas. I mean, the painted art style does have an added impact later in the game. The voice actors here are perfectly cast, in my opinion. Obviously, Charlie Cox, incredible. Andy Serkis as Renoir, I hope he wins an award for this. Andy Serkis embodied Renoir in this, and it was amazing. Jennifer English does an amazing job as Maëlle, and she did an amazing job as Shadowheart in Baldur's Gate 3. I hope she keeps getting cast and stuff, because she's killed it in both the games that I've heard her in. I mean, there may be other games I've played I didn't even realize, but she doesn't phone anything in. There's real range there, and she just did a really good job as well. There are small character moments in this game. There's a whole relationship system that you have to level up, and by the end of the game, I think it's level 7 you get to, and there are critical character moments that you don't even get to experience if you don't take the time to have those optional conversations at the camp each night. Also, the expedition journals. These are some of the best collectibles in any open world game or game in general. A lot of times when I found one, I'd actually take that momentary pause to listen to what the past expedition went through, which is something that off the top of my head, I can't say for any other game. SKA, I love that guy or thing or whatever it is. SKA is awesome, delivered some of the best lines in the game, some of the most memorable, you know. Also, this game is funny, and I feel like that isn't praised enough. Like, people have been praising this game, don't get me wrong, there's no shortage of praise for this game, but the comedy here is something I haven't seen a lot of people talk about, and I love it. I don't know, maybe it's just my particular sense of humor, but I thought this game was really funny. And I actually started a New Game Plus playthrough while making this video just to kind of refamiliarize myself with a lot of the earlier parts of the game, and I've really been able to appreciate a lot of that humor without concern with like where the story is going and stuff like that. I just get to sit back and enjoy the experience. Also, in general, this is kind of just applies to the game as a whole. The lack of handholding here is also great in terms of gameplay, and I think that that also mirrors how Sandfall goes about telling this story, because in the same way that they trust the player to comprehend the narrative, they trust the player to engage with the gameplay systems in order to be effective in combat. And with all of the things that I like, there is one thing that I hate. I don't know why this is in the game. While I do think it would have been funny to add this as a little like gag or whatever, I mean, that only up parody section thing is ridiculous. There's no reason for that to be in the game. I don't know. I don't really know, in a game with movement that never has to be precise, why would you ever put this in the game? Like, for as many positive things as I'm gonna say, I do have to get that one negative out of the way. That shit is horrible. Every single one of them sucks. Gestural volleyball is probably the most mad that I've been at a game in recent memory. Like, maybe since I was a teenager. Alright, it's here that I have to cut it off. If you haven't played this game, you need to go and play it. If you want to, I guess. If you got the money, I mean, the game's only 40, 50 bucks. You can probably find it discounted somewhere by now, but if anything you've heard up to this point sounds even remotely interesting, go get this game, go try it out, because me telling you anything more about the story is really going to compromise the experience. So I hope you go play this game. I hope you love it as much as I do. Come back to the video, you know, bookmark it, whatever. But spoiler warning for anything past basically the first 30 to 45 minutes of this game. And also spoiler warning for everything on screen here. I'm just going to mention a couple things, but I am going to have to mention like basically the crux of the entire plot of these stories. So if you haven't seen these, go watch them too. They're great. Some of my favorite things. And yeah, but if you've seen all these things and if you've played Expedition 33 all the way through, stick around. We're going to get into it. Let's talk about this story, man. Now, moving forward in the story, things from here get a lot more complicated. So in order to set this up, I'll give you a little fun fact about me. This past summer, I watched all of Attack on Titan and Dark, which I know is a pretty big summer for me, just experiencing peak. I don't know, this shit, it was a wild ride for a couple months there, and just watching and playing this stuff. After finishing Expedition 33 and then watching these shows, I could not help but just sense some similarities. These stories really confirmed a lot of my feelings about the story of Expedition 33 when I started to think about them to try and figure out what that was about. Again, if you haven't seen these shows and you've been lucky enough to not have them spoiled, go watch them, but I'm about to get into it big time here.
This is ultimately a war of information. There's still too much we don't understand. Where the paintress comes from? Why she does what she does? Who is she? 70 years and we still barely know anything.
Thinking about all these stories in their entirety, all of them have something in common. In Attack on Titan, the conflict you come to know in Season 1 is basically irrelevant to the conclusion of the story, at least contextually speaking. Paradise, which is not even named in the beginning of the show because it's kind of assumed that this island is all that's left of the world, ends up being a refuge for a race of people that have been exiled from the rest of society. In Dark, the disappearance of Mikkel in Season 1 is ultimately a laughably small part of the major plot beats by the end. We start with a child going missing and end with an interconnected family tree and a battle for power spanning hundreds of years that has repeated itself essentially infinite times over. In Expedition 33, the journey to end the Gommage seems trivial when given the larger context of the world. It turns out that the paintress wasn't even causing the Gommage, but was actually the one preventing it from ending everyone's lives within the canvas. And, by the way, it's a canvas, not even the real world. And, by the way, Maëlle is a real person who went into the canvas to try and help her family and ended up living over 10 years of relativity-based time before she could even remember who she was or why she was here in the first place. In this light, the paintress doesn't seem so important. That's what all of these stories do. They set something up in the early parts of the story, and then they completely flip that on its head. But they all share the same through line. The characters are what you stick around for. They're what's driving the story forward the whole time. Because the characters are the heart of these stories, the writers are able to dramatically change the context surrounding the experience of these characters without making the story feel cheap or sporadic. Attack on Titan isn't a story about killing titans in the end. It's a story about Eren Yeager and how he fights against oppression to protect his people, only to become an oppressor and killer like the ones he's been fighting against. The story challenges you to say whether Reiner, Bertolt, Annie, or any of the indoctrinated Marlians are really any different from Eren and the Eldians in Paradise. The story is about the characters, their motivations, and it challenges viewers to question who is right or wrong, or if anyone is right or wrong given the circumstances. Dark isn't a story about Mikkel going missing or time travel. It's a story about the concept of fate and how the characters here battle against it. And eventually they're revealed to be the idea of fate they've been fighting against. It's a story about Jonas and Marta coping with shared suffering, realizing that some pain is unavoidable, and trying to find a way to save the people they love, end a cycle of pain, and right the cosmic doings of H.G. Tannhaus, a man who was only trying to save someone he loved, which low-key he kind of succeeded at doing, by the way. Like, the machine did what it was supposed to do. It's like my favorite aspect of that show. I love that shit.
But if we take down the Paintress, at least that gives future generations a chance to unravel the mystery.
You seem better than before.
Yeah. Holding it together. Shock's worn off. A bit. We can't bring anyone back. But I thought we can keep their spirit alive by pushing forward. And at least there's 3 of us now. The mission hasn't changed.
Tomorrow comes.
Tomorrow comes.
Expedition 33, in the same way, is not a story about reaching the Paintress and ending the Gommage like you would believe in the beginning of Act 1. It's a story about Mael and her family. I mean, really, the story does end up being about the Paintress, but not in the way that it may seem initially. Like I said, these stories have the same thing in common in that you're focused on the characters, and you really don't even notice all this crazy shit that's changing. It's only when you look back to the beginning of the story, once you've been given all of the information, that you can truly begin to understand what these shows are about. It's complex character writing and complex story writing and intricate detailing. It's elements of good stories. That's what I'm trying to say here, is that all of these stories are considered, to some degree, some of the best in class in their respective categories. And Expedition 33 has similarities that are important. With this aspect of how the story is being told in mind, I'm going to run through the basics of the plot just to set the scene without recounting all of the intricacies within the plot at work here. I like to watch a lot of movies, and when I do, like a lot of you probably, I'll go and look up whatever movie explained, and I really can't stand when they just tell me what happens in the movie without elaborating or giving any kind of thought at all. So I'm going to try and hit the cliff notes here. After the opening moments, Expedition 33 sets off for the continent, the series of areas surrounding the island that is home to the Paintress. But when they land at the beach, there's an immediate reality check. A mysterious man with powerful Nevrons in tow proceeds to wipe out most of the expeditioners just moments after they reach land. From here, the crew that survived the slaughter proceeds with their mission. They journey closer and closer to the Paintress until the first major turning point in the plot. Gustav is killed by this same man while he's trying to protect Mael.
For those who come after. Right?
And this is a pivotal moment for the survivors of Expedition 33 in this story. They choose to continue, and along the way they meet a cast of characters who help them on their journey, one of which being Verso de Sandre, an immortal expeditioner who's been stranded on the continent since Expedition 0. The group eventually reaches the Paintress, putting an end to her after years and years of trying, and that is almost the end of Act 2. So just to go back, when the game begins, the purpose of the story on a surface level is to stop the Paintress. Then it's to stop the white-haired man and stop the Paintress. And then you stop the Paintress. And it's at this point that everything changes. As our cast of characters gets back to Lumiere, everyone there, and presumably all humans in any other parts of this world, are wiped out by a universal final Gommage after the Paintress falls. And you get to watch it play out, because this is a good, lighthearted, fun game, fun time. It's not like emotional damage for life. So after this Gommage, you hit the epilogue sequence, and it's revealed the entire world you spent the last 20 to 30 hours in was not real, per se. It's not the world. The whole area you've been living in is part of a painting, and that painting lives in a real-world version of the mansion you've gotten a couple of chances to explore before now. Through a series of dialogue instances and cutscenes, Sandfall explains that the world you've been introduced to is a painting that is designed by Mael's real-world family, the Desandres. They are painters, individuals with the ability to create interactable, enterable, livable worlds on a canvas through unexplained means. Okay, man. What the fuck? This whole story, like I talked about with the other ones, is completely flipped on its head. The driving force of the plot has shifted from stopping the Gommage to even figuring out what the fuck is going on. Over 20 hours into the game, by the way. Eventually, it's revealed that the event that started this whole story was a house fire at the home of the Desandre family. During this house fire, the Desandre's son, Verso, died in the process of trying to save the youngest daughter, Alicia. Sometime later, Aline enters one of the canvases that her son Verso created. She then decides that she can't bring herself to leave. She becomes the paintress, creating new aspects of this world, including a painted version of her son, made immortal this time. She also creates a painted version of her husband, Renoir, that serves to protect her vessel within this world by keeping expeditioners away from the heart of the canvas. Seems fine enough, but there's an issue. Aline is slowly decaying outside in the real world. The more time she spends in the canvas without taking a break, the closer she comes to death. Back in the real world, Renoir sees a fractured family that is delaying the process of grief through distraction. He takes it upon himself to try and save his wife from herself, and he enters the canvas to put an end to this painted world. So it turns out this conflict is what created everything, that Renoir is actually the one starting the Gommage, and Aline is the one protecting the Society of Lumiere. She's writing the number on the monolith not to threaten, but to warn, and tell them that this is the only group of people she has enough power to keep alive. At the same time, Alicia and Clea, the youngest and oldest Desandre daughters respectively, see that it's been a while since Renoir entered the canvas, and Alicia is sent in to bring her father and her mother back to reality. But this plan backfires. Like, really, really backfires.
I have decided on her name. And her name will be... Mael.
Alicia ends up becoming an idyllic version of herself. No scarring, a found family of her own, a purpose in life of stopping the paintress, a strong will and determination, and capabilities beyond those of her real self. It's a lot to take in, and especially when you've just been through all of these boss fights. You just fought the paintress, which is like a 20 to 30 minute ordeal, and then it's like, alright, sit back and we're gonna rock your fucking world real quick. This is what I'm talking about though. This is the real story of Expedition 33. Through this sequence of reveals, players witness a family that is fractured and broken. A mother who can't bear the weight of her child's passing. A husband who can't see his wife crumble under the weight of grief, on top of being left to cope with his son's death alone. A sister who is trying her best to hold it together and isolating herself from the rest of her family through cold attitude and, at times, unnecessarily brutal honesty. And Alicia. Alicia is a young girl who has not only had a near-death experience, but now has to live with the fact that she was such a critical component of the events that led up to her brother's death. In this tragedy, Alicia effectively becomes the outcast of her family, and this inner feeling is reflected by her physical characteristics of scarring and her inability to speak. She's alone. Maybe not physically, but alone nonetheless. Expedition uses these moments to challenge the player. You might start to question what it was all even for, and what this world-ending Gommage you've just experienced means for all the characters you've grown to love. So a lot just happened. I mean, that was an atomic bomb level plot twist, but we're right back in it. We're controlling Mael. Through regaining the memories you witness, Mael remembers how to paint. She repaints herself as well as finding a way to bring back the core crew. Now we only have Renoir to deal with. After defeating the paintress, the only force that stands between this canvas and permanent destruction is Mael. Or Alicia. Dealer's choice at this point, I guess.
Papa, please. This is Verso's only canvas. You can't destroy the last piece of him that we have. This is my home now. You can't just decide...
Your home? After all that with your mother, you want to stay?
You know how little remains of my life outside.
Alicia, you'll die. You've already been here longer than you should.
But...
No. Look at me, I said no. I am not letting my daughter risk her life. Alicia...
No, Mum. I'm not going to lose myself if I stay.
I know full well you will, and I am not doing this again.
Renoir tells her that all he wants her to do is leave the campus so the Desandre family can destroy it and begin to heal together. But Maëlle resists. She's grown to love this world just like you and her friends, really her family within it. The group rallies together to put an end to the powers that rule this world so that everyone within it can finally live life free of this constant exterior existential threat to life. And you do it. You beat Renoir, you defeat him, and he basically tells you that you're free to do as you please. But that's not the end of the game. When you reach the final moments of this game, Sandfall has one last plot twist for you to experience. Upon defeating Renoir, Verso enters what is essentially the heart of the canvas that Aline was protecting. It's revealed that this canvas, and presumably every canvas that this family paints, contains a small piece of the artist's soul, forced to reside within the world so long as it continues to exist. Painted Verso tells Maëlle that he wants to stop the endless labor of this final living piece of real Verso's soul. He wants to finally just put this whole thing to rest. It's here that you're given a choice. For the first time in the game, the narrative opens up to you, the player. You fight as Maëlle or fight as Verso. When choosing to fight as Verso, you do exactly what he wanted. You finally put an end to the entire ordeal that is this canvas. You rid the Desandre family of the thing that was keeping them from really coping with the devastating loss of their son. And I mean an unnecessarily sad and heartbreaking scene with the painted characters saying their final goodbyes to Maëlle. I chose to fight as Maëlle. To be honest, I didn't really even think about it for a second. I knew that Maëlle, the second that Gustave died, I was like, alright, you're the main character now. So through the end, I was with Maëlle. I love these characters. Like, I didn't want to see them go anywhere. So I'm protecting this canvas. I'm making the choice that is easy, the choice that came to me first. And when Maëlle wins this duel, she gains control of the canvas. She uses this power to bring all of the people lost to the Gommage over the years back to life. Players witness Gustave, Sophie, Ciel's husband, and the rest of the court cast all gathering to watch a piano performance by Verso. But when he goes to start playing, he hesitates a little bit, and the camera shifts to Maëlle, revealing that she, like her mother before her, is now dying in the real world because of all the time that she spent in this one. The endings of Expedition 33 are both pretty challenging. I mean, for one, it's rare for players to be faced with no fully good option. In Verso's ending, all the characters we spent this entire time with cease to exist. While this is heartbreaking, most players believe this to be the true ending, as the Desandre family is finally reunited, able to begin the grieving process together. In Maëlle's ending, the painted characters get to live, but their lives come at the cost of Alicia's. I think both of these endings are true, and I think they're both equally important and integral parts of the story that Sandfall has given to us. Both endings contribute to the same story, just with different paths that real humans have walked since the beginning of human consciousness. And I mean, I don't know that for a fact, I wasn't there, but I've been around for a minute, and I would assume. Sandfall tells us a story about characters dealing with grief, and all the ways in which that amazingly complex package of emotions affects people. Sometimes people learn to cope with loss. They connect with family and friends to help them through this process, and a lot of times you grow and learn things about yourself as a person through that. That's Verso's ending. But in my eyes, Maëlle's ending is just as meaningful to the story being told. Maëlle's ending depicts dangers inherent to the reality of being human. Grief can become cyclical. In the case of this story, Aline's resistance to grief leads Alicia to have an avenue to lose herself, leading to her presumed eventual death and restarting the cycle of grief for this family all over again. Everyone in the world is going to lose someone or something and deal with grief that comes with that at some point in their lives, and it never really leaves. You just learn to live with it. The loss you experience becomes a part of who you are, and everyone who's ever felt a loss knows that. And for this reason, the game gets super heavy in the end. But that's part of what makes it impactful. In one ending, the Desandre family is together again, but they've been forced, due to their own human nature, to get rid of one of the last tangible connections they have to their son. Alicia has been forced to say goodbye to the group of people that were a big part of her personal growth and life experiences as a young person. In the other reality, Aline is saved, but Alicia is lost. But she gets to be happy, so is it justified for her to choose that happiness over her real family? Would she have ever been happy again in the real world? There's no way of knowing in this situation. And that's how it really is. When you make a choice, you don't know how things are going to end up. Expedition 33 has a beautifully realistic depiction of the human condition, even through these fantastical settings and characters. Loss is a part of life, a part of that condition of being human. Where some stories would keep this to Verso's version of things, put a nice bow on it all, Sandfall doesn't pull their punches. because they aren't telling a story about the triumph of family. They're telling a story about humans and how we cope with life. The duality of the end challenges the player's minds and hearts almost as much as it challenges your reaction time with those precise parry windows at every fight. The game asks you complex questions. When faced with tragedy, what is the right way to respond? Is there a right or wrong response in these endings? I think there is no right or wrong answer to a lot of these questions, because being human isn't some test of knowledge or seeing if you're going to make the right choice given the context of the situation. In either ending, for everything gained, something will always be lost. And just like the real world, there is ultimately no true consistent villain here, other than the fallibility of human decision-making in response to experienced emotion. The choice between these endings is one based in reality. It's not make the right choice or choose who you like more, even though that's what I did. While it's easy to say that Verso's ending is the correct moral choice, how many people opt for a path more like Mael's when faced with the choice of hurt or escape, pain or distraction? Like I said, it's pretty brutal, but it's real and complex. Regardless of where your opinion falls on this moral, philosophical dilemma, you aren't wrong. Both endings again ask the player a question. How will you respond to tragedy, loss, and grief? Which road will you take? Alright, man, we gotta lighten this up. It's a lot, man. Let's lighten up for the rest of the video. What do you say? Expedition 33 is an unforgettable experience. In the end, it just reminded me of some of my favorite games, movies, TV shows, or any kind of media, really. The writers use grief as an avenue to highlight aspects of the complexities of human emotion. I think a common characteristic of media commonly regarded as best in class is the ability for an individual to see some part of themselves or their life within it. Every player or viewer or any kind of person who engages with any form of media brings something different to the table, different life experiences and opinions. That's one of the difficulties of finding mass appeal, because everyone is always going to have something different to say. But by crafting a story in such a way that all of these unique players can take something different away from it, writers allow their work to take on a form of its own, beyond their capabilities. That takes confidence and trust in your team to take a chance like that and make it happen, and Sandfall nailed it with this one. Players are able to make an emotional connection with the story here beyond just the plot events, and that creates a lasting impact. I personally played through this game as I was graduating college. Like, literally, I think I finished it either the day before I walked in the ceremony or the day of, or something like that. So I was going through a lot of change in my life, something that I've historically struggled with in the past. But through playing this game, as weird as it sounds with how downright depressing this game can be at times, I was able to find some sort of comfort. This story helped me to cope with the fact that periods like the one I was in at the time are a part of life. Grief for something lost is natural, human, and ultimately, all that matters out of that is how you as an individual choose to respond. And on top of that, man, I just got to feel like a kid again too, because I played a few hours, told my friends that they had to get the game, and then they did. At one point, I was sitting in a PlayStation party playing through this game with another friend who was also playing through the game, and a roommate playing the game 2 rooms away from me. I'd get to the end of one section or through one boss fight and just sit there waiting to hear their reactions or their frustration as they just couldn't get past a specific boss, or couldn't believe what they'd just seen. When they both finished the game, we got to talk about what we thought about the endings, and a lot of those discussions became components of the script for this video. Games like this connect people, and they remind at times jaded players what a great game looks like. It reminded me of games that brought me into this hobby as a kid in the first place. I don't know, I just think there's just like a lot of shit going on all the time, and I think one of the reasons I love good stories like this one are because they help me to figure some things out about myself through trying to think about the story. This game's been getting a lot of buzz for Game of the Year, and obviously I hope it wins if that wasn't clear. I don't know, I haven't played a lot of the other games that are frontrunners for nominations, and I'm sure they're great. I'm sure a lot of these games will be remembered regardless of who wins that award, because this has been a great year for games, like I said in the beginning. I think though that, to me, Expedition 33 winning Game of the Year would be a real win for the industry. Not to say that something like KCD2 or Hollow Knight Silksong wouldn't be, but I mean, y'all have heard the stories behind this game, I'm sure. And to anyone at Sandfall who may by some miracle see this, thank you for your hard work and dedication. Honestly though, regardless of who wins some award at the end of the year, that's okay. We live in a time for the video game landscape where Expedition 33, technically an indie game, is even being considered over other big name heavy hitters, and games like Hollow Knight Silksong that come at the cool price of $20 are more anticipated than your yearly AAA powerhouses. It's been a great year for games, and for me, Expedition 33 is a huge part of that. This game isn't great because of the size or name of the studio who made it. Expedition 33 is great because it tells a story that anyone can find some way to relate to, and that's on top of delivering some of the best and most polished gameplay systems that have been seen on this scale in a while. The power of all of these aspects together is what propels this game to an all-timer, and I think anyone who is even mildly interested in video games or even just a good story should find the time to play this one. I will never forget this game. Hell, I just wrote a 20-something page script just because I can't quit thinking about or talking about this game to anyone who will listen. I hope anyone who watched until the end loves this game as much as I do, so you get what I'm saying, or you got something out of the video at least. I hope we can keep playing, discussing, and highlighting important stories like this one, because we, and when I say we, I mean me, desperately need more of this. I like to talk about things that I'm passionate about, so really no idea what could come next. Maybe just another video on this game, but if you enjoyed, subscribe for more, and thank you so much for taking the time to watch my video. I hope you enjoyed.
Oh, I'm running as soon as I see a strand of white hair, trust me. You won't even see me, I'm running so fast.
Oh, please, you're an old man. I can outrun you any day.
Yeah, right. There was a time when 30 was young, you know?
Sure.